Pat Rush. I'm the pastor emeritus of Visitation, and happy to welcome you here for this celebration of Maureen Kelly's life. Maureen and I met early on when she came to Kansas City in the late 70s and worked together as she really helped lead our diocese to establish a very robust Christian education, adult education program for the diocese. More apropos to your being here this afternoon, she was on staff here at Visitation for about 3 or 4 years in the early to mid 80s, and is still remembered for her work here by several of the old guard. So welcome, thanks for coming. I'm going to turn this over to Winnie in just a moment, but I would not be a good host if I didn't tell you there are restrooms. And if you need them, you have to go through the church at the main doors, not the one you came in, but the main doors, and you'll find them there.
Thank you, sir. Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
So, I have the honor of facilitating the celebration today. Maureen lived a big, rich, full life, and each one of us has a story to tell, or many stories about that. Her service commitment towards others is the backbone of this life that she lived. Those of us here represent her origin family, which many are sitting over here, as well as created families in the spiritual world that Father just talked about, and as a vital member of Alcoholics Anonymous. On the bottom of your program, there's a Celtic interwoven knot. She has an Irish heritage, so we wanted to honor that part by including something. The Celtic interwoven knot is a representation of the path of our lives. The single interwoven line illustrates the continuity of eternal love and binding together of souls and spirits that one encounters in one's life. As a labyrinth, people pass through this to the center, which is the highest degree of spirituality. We all know that Maureen has lived in the highest degree of spirituality for many decades, and as she encountered each of us individually. So, as Father just said, Maureen was a very prolific writer in the spiritual world, and so we thought it was perfectly fitting to have some words exactly from Maureen to share with you today. And this is an excerpt from Right magazine in 2006. Your reference is on the program if you want to read the original. I've paraphrased here to make it relevant to our service today. And I want you to think of me channeling Maureen as I talk. Much obliged is an old-fashioned phrase first noted in the Old Oxford English Dictionary in the 16th century. Over the centuries, the phrase has lost some of its richness. Originally, it meant to be bound to a person by ties of gratitude. Today, the phrase is more often used as an automatic response to someone who has performed a perfunctory service. Unfortunately, this practice does not convey the sense of truly being bound to each other by gratitude. Because of that loss, many people understand the word obligation as a burden, rather than as a commitment and a duty that flows from each of our relationships. In this way, obligation comes from within the heart of the relationship itself. Think of the obligations that make for a rich family life. In loving relationships, we are grateful for the gift of each other, and we express gratitude by doing right actions because we want to do so. Obligatory behaviors in both origin and created families grow out of communication, intimacy, and personal and communal relationships, which we've all experienced. We gather as a community, grateful to have each other as fellow pilgrims, grateful to be nourished by our relationships. Just as food nourishes our body, our participation together nourishes our spirit and unites us together as individuals and as a community. Being much obliged gives us reason to be more obliged in the most authentic sense of our commitments to each other. Can you hear her? She's probably said some of those sentences to each one of us over her life. And now Stephen King part of Maureen's spiritual family, will read a passage that he has selected for our service.
So many familiar faces. Thank you, Winnie. Pat Rush, thank you. So I was asked to present one spiritual reading for Maureen Kelly. Okay. One reading to memorialize Maureen Kelly. Well, the Maureen I knew wore many hats. So I invite you to share 3 short readings that I want to use to lift up Maureen's life. That is to say, readings that address her experience in recovery, her experience in human love, and her profound respect for the God, the gentle God, the hospitable God of her understanding. Recovery first. Maureen's recovery hat dates back to 1982. She wore her recovery hat in a manner that displayed her indefatigable sense of humor. Irrepressible sense of humor. So here are these words from Alcoholics Anonymous, the big book, pages 131 and 132. Quote, "We are not a glum lot. If newcomers could see no joy or fun in our existence, they wouldn't want what we have. We absolutely insist on enjoying life. We think our cheerfulness and laughter make for usefulness. Outsiders are sometimes shocked when we burst into merriment over a seemingly tragic experience out of the past. Why shouldn't we laugh? We have recovered and have been given the power to help others. We are sure God wants us to be happy, joyous, and free." Close quote. And then along came Paul Cap. Maureen continued in recovery, now with Paul as an ally. As I recall, everyone who knew either Maureen or Paul was delighted when they decided to marry. And they asked Visitation Church to witness the exchange of their vows. And Maureen and Paul eagerly agreed to participate in the church's marriage preparation program. Whoa. Whoa. The parish, Father Bob Ross was the pastor then, and Peg Eckert, his assistant, presented options to the couple. And Maureen and Paul said they would do a marriage preparation group with Shayla and me as their lead couple. Well, what an honor for us, the Kings, to talk with Maureen and Paul about love and family and life and other things. I want you to consider the humility of an ordained minister widower and of an intellectual author lecturer, Maureen, and they, oh yeah, we'll sit down with the Kings and talk about how we're going to live our life. They did so because they were in love. So, what did I do? A second reading about love. And I thought, a Shakespeare sonnet, comparison to a summer day. No. This is Maureen and Paul, children of the 50s and 60s. Quote, I bless the day I found you. I want to stay around you now and forever. Let it be me. Don't take this heaven from one. If you must turn to someone, now and forever, let it be me. Each time we meet love, I find complete love. Without your sweet love, what would life be? So never leave me lonely. Tell me you love me only, and that you'll always let it be me. Credits to the Everly Brothers, who, by the way, stole that song. Well, they acquired the rights to the song. It was a French song. It was a hit in France before they did the harmony on it, the close harmony that the Everly Brothers could do. So Shayla and I had the pleasure of visiting Paul and Maureen while they lived on the East Coast. They welcomed us twice, the first time in the fall of 94. And I think that home was in Maryland. And then 2 years later at their home in Falls Church, Virginia. No matter where, Paul knew exactly where to get the best ice cream money could buy. Yeah. He knew about cows and fat content. Moo. So, the welcome they extended to us leads me to this third and final reflection. So I invite you to focus on, she's not wearing green in either of these pictures, to the Maureen Kelly of Brookside, the hostess of 6315 Main Street, and picture her as she greets her many guests for another St. Patrick's Day practice parade. Maureen and Paul's Kansas City bungalow was a favorite destination for anyone and everyone. It was a great place to watch parade silliness. Her porch and lawn and sidewalk became viewing stands as guests selected their preferred location depending on their level of enthusiasm for parades and depending on what the day offered weather-wise. Guests watched and cheered and laughed and then returned to the munchies and goodies spread out across Maureen's dining room table. After 5 minutes, it was chaos on the table. And Paul wore the same hearty grin every year, even after he had given up trying to recall any of the guests that showed up. He was just having fun. And if you were there for any or every parade, I trust you remember how much Maureen enjoyed those days. Oh my goodness. And she especially enjoyed having guests in her home. So, for the third reading, this is an old poem. And because it's an old poem, it uses the word man, where we would say human, or humankind. But if I tried to rework it, it wouldn't have any rhythm or pace. The House by the Side of the Road by Sam Walter Foss. There are hermit souls that live withdrawn in the place of their self-content. There are souls like stars that dwell apart in a fellowless firmament. There are pioneer souls that blaze their paths where highways never ran. But let me live by the side of the road and be a friend to man. Let me live in a house by the side of the road where the race of men go by, the men who are good and the men who are bad, as good and as bad as I. I would not sit in the scorner's seat or hurl the cynic's ban. Let me live in a house by the side of the road and be a friend to man. I see from my house by the side of the road, by the side of the highway of life, the men who press with the ardor of hope, the men who are faint with the strife. But I turn not away from their smiles nor their tears, both parts of an infinite plan. Let me live in a house by the side of the road and be a friend to man. I know there are brook-gladdened meadows ahead and mountains of wearisome height. And the road passes on through the long afternoon and stretches away to the night. But still I rejoice when the travelers rejoice and weep with the strangers that moan, nor live in my house by the side of the road like a man who dwells alone. Let me live in my house by the side of the road where the race of men go by. They are good, they are bad, they are weak, they are strong, wise, foolish, so am I. Then why should I sit in the scorner's seat or hurl the cynic's ban? Let me live in the house by the side of the road and be a friend to man. I think I told Maureen thank you along the way. I know I said the words. I don't know if I thanked her for everything, but I got to sit with her at Paul's funeral and remember those ventures with Maureen. Thank you for asking me to do this. I appreciate the opportunity.
Courtney Christensen, her niece, Kevin Kelly, nephew and godson, and Mary Claire Fahey, who is going to read some words from her niece Erin, who could not be here today because she's taking care of other family members.
I am Courtney Christensen. Most people probably know me as Carter's mom. I feel like that's
Oh yeah.
So I wrote down a few notes. I don't really have much organized thoughts, but I figured I could share those. Since it is on my phone, I would expect Maureen to call me right now since I needed to use it, but my dad might, so there's that. So I had a complicated relationship with my mom, and Maureen was the person who really stepped in to fill in those gaps. She bought me the first set of makeup that I needed. She even talked to my dad about bras, which I'm sure was a great conversation for the two of them. She taught me about relationships. And, you know, her and Paul were the example that I wanted to have for my relationship, which is nice because in a weird way, that's kind of what turned out. She was the person that I called for everything, especially during my pregnancy and the decline of my father's health. She was the person who took over all the calls that I would normally make with my father for advice because of his declining health, he couldn't take them anymore. She actually would have made a really great lawyer because I would call her about career stuff. I don't know what that says, but And she helped me navigate relationships, friendships, and my career. She was my rock and had always been the example of how I wanted to live my life. We would exchange cards and presents on Mother's Day. And it's funny because even when I just had a dog, she would still send me Mother's Day stuff, which wanted to make me feel involved. She taught me to travel. My family's probably favorite story is when I was about 14, she took me on a Paris trip alone with her. And it was very amazing, and I came home and I was telling my parents about what a great time that I had, and very quickly they realized that I was wandering around Paris by myself. And Maureen and I had learned that that was not proper, and then she called me soon after to tell me that I should do that in the future again, that that was fun. So that's Maureen. And it was a successful trip, but still learning stuff. When I got married finally to the right person, which is my husband Travis, I did not have anyone to go dress shopping with, and I was not going to wear a wedding dress. And Maureen knew that this was a problem for my first wedding too. And she had asked me to look at pictures of dresses, and I told her that I really liked this one, and it just showed up one day, and she bought it for me. And so that I could have a dress for the wedding, which I thought was always nice, because you didn't get that moment. So. She knew that it was important to me probably more than I knew it was important to me at the time too. And that was kind of always Maureen. It's, the things that happen. Despite all this though, Maureen did make it very clear that if she had the opportunity to steal my husband Travis, she absolutely would. Including telling him this multiple times. She was not only the mother figure that I needed, but also she called my son Carter her grandson. He called her grandma, and she really filled that role for him, which became increasingly important too as my father declined as well. Perhaps the strongest demonstration of Maureen's love for my family was her toleration of my dog Cash. I don't know if everybody is aware of Maureen's fondness for dogs, which is not incredibly fond. But she actually would let Cash touch her, which I think is very unheard of for Maureen. Then she would be like, go away. But it was nice. And she was very upset that he did not speak English. So he did not hear to leave her alone. But I don't know that I would have made it to where I am in life without Maureen. I'm very happy that she's finally with Paul and that I was able to bring them here and be together. And that's really all I have to say, but thank you for letting me talk.
Thank you.
I'm Kevin Kelly, and I'm, like you said, Maureen's nephew, and similar to Courtney, I had a little strained relationship with my birth mother, so I was really lucky to have Aunt Maureen as my godmother. I think a lot of people in my Roman Catholic religion, including my birth mother, have a real fear that I'm going to hell, and Aunt Maureen helped me be me, and I also want to thank Aunt Teresa and Aunt Mary Claire here for setting that example. Maureen was definitely a trailblazer as the oldest of her siblings. The majority of her siblings ended up at least going close to taking holy orders at some point. So my father was the second child, and he went off to the monastery to become a priest for a little bit. Obviously, that didn't go very far. He had me and my brothers, and then there was Eddie, which is Courtney's father, who also tried out holy orders. He also tried out the military. And, yeah.
The military was joining the Air Force and after drafting. Still something to be in.
That's how I heard it. Yep. And then, of course, Kevin came next, and he became a police officer. Had kids young, avoided all that, and then Aunt Teresa. And so I've been lucky to have Aunt Maureen in my life. I remember going to visit her when she lived in DC, and as Stephen said, Paul was the expert on ice cream, and I just remember hearing him say, "Oh, the Jersey cows." But yeah, and like Courtney, she would send me and my younger brother Sean. We just go to DC. There was all kinds of museums and stuff to go to. So when I finally got to come here in Kansas City, I went to the Nelson Atkins Museum, and so I wanted to finish with the postcard that I wrote my Aunt Maureen from Nelson Atkins. So, dear Aunt Mo, I finally made it to Kansas City, and I realize it's a bit late on your end. LOL. You were right. The barbecue's worth getting over my fear of flying. And I couldn't stay away from Nelson Atkins. I chose the Caravaggio for you since it's a young John the Baptist in the wilderness, both because I was lucky enough to have you be such an awesome godmother at my baptism, and also because it reminds me of when I was a young man and you helped me be me. Now there's some other paintings of the Baptist a bit later in life with a full beard, his head lifeless on a silver platter, though, unfortunately. So I thought those would be a poor choice for this postcard. I miss your live conversations about our clients going through suffering while preparing for death, and reminded how you pointed out that none of us are experts on death. Anyways, I got to meet many of your other family, your chosen family, and your other godchildren here on this gorgeous day in Kansas City, and witness you living on here through our relationships with you. And even though there's no experts in death, you were an expert on love. I'm so blessed to have you in my life, and I'll see you around soon. Love, Kevin.
Good afternoon, everybody. When it became obvious that Erin wasn't going to be able to make it today because her dad went to the hospital, she asked me to give her a hand. So let me see how I can do today. We celebrate life and cherish it and the memories of our Aunt Maureen, who touched many lives in so many ways. And I'm just going to read it the way she wrote it so that you can hear it in her voice. In 1 Corinthians, it's written, "Love is patient, love is kind." These words perfectly describe Maureen's easygoing nature. She had an incredible ability to bring joy and laughter to any room. Her hearty laugh, her words of encouragement, her listening ear, her genuine interest in the lives of others. She made us feel valued. She made us feel loved. She was always there for us. She believed in the power of strong connections and nurtured her friendships with care and devotion. Maureen had a knack for finding humor in just about everything. She could lighten the mood with a witty remark, always well-timed. As an ICU nurse during the pandemic days, I sometimes felt overwhelmed and filled with anxiety. Her laughter, her love for connection, her zest for life. Let us honor her by embracing her easygoing nature, finding joy in little things, and cherishing the bonds we share with our loved ones. In 1 Corinthians, it's written, "And now these three remain: faith, hope, and love. But the most important of these is love." Aunt Maureen's life was a testament to the power of love. May her legacy inspire us to love unconditionally, to find joy in every moment, and to cherish the connections we have with one another. Thank you for letting me share Erin's words, and just on my own, having known Mo as a sister-in-law. She was a funny lady. She was a complicated lady. You know, she still chewed Nicorette to her dying day, I'm pretty sure. She hadn't had a cigarette since the 80s. So, but in her complication, she was also very simple. She loved God, she loved Paul, she loved her family, and she had the biggest family, not just the Kellys, not just Paul's family, but everywhere she went, she created family. And your presence here with us today is such a beautiful testament to that. And I just want to tell you how grateful Teresa and I are to be invited here to be with you today and to raise Mo and Paul along with her. So amen.
Thank you.
I'm Mary Beth Johnson, and I am an alcoholic. And I'm a real alcoholic, as Maureen knows. She was my sponsor from like 2005-ish, the day she died. I think it's really like, of course she died on Halloween. Of course she did. Well, I'm going to have to talk with her about that when I get to see her again. I was really interested in, we all have a picture of Maureen and how she affected us and what she brought to our lives. And some of the words I would use was her wit and her humor. I would call her sometimes, and I was legitimately pissed off. And by the time I hung up, I was laughing. I would call her sometimes when my feelings had gotten hurt beyond repair. I would never live through this. And when I hung up, I was laughing. We did that for each other. She would call me too. And be overcome with grief sometimes about how she missed Paul. We had a lot of conversations about our shared grief. Her Paul, who left her intellectually years before he died, and my son Mike, who died of alcoholism when he hanged himself in 2010. And, you know, that shared experience of grief that's that profound, it was really important for me to have somebody to talk to who has experienced grief of that nature. And Paul was not a husband. Paul was her person. Paul was her, part of her soul. You know, I haven't known many couples who really are soulmates, but they were. And I didn't get to meet Paul when he was the Paul she married. I met Paul when he was well into his declining years. And one story, one especially sad day, she called and we were talking about Paul, and she said, well, she said, the other night I was getting ready for bed and Paul was already in the bed, and I started to crawl in, and he said, oh, wait. Who are you? And she said, well, Paul, you know who I am. He said, are you planning to get in this bed with me? And he said yes, and he said, I don't think my wife would like that. And our grief was sweet. That's a part of it I didn't know about grief, that there's a sweetness to it. When you've had the opportunity to love somebody the way she loved Paul and the way I loved my son. And there are people in this room who loved her like I loved her. And she left us with sweet memories. And she left us with wise words. And she did things that you go, why would she do? When I was leaving for the Peace Corps in '09, I thought, I don't know what I was just musing. That I don't know what I'm going to do about my finances. I mean, I'm not going to be here to pay the bills and stuff. I wondered how that. She said, I'll do that for you. Who does that? I mean, I didn't even do it for my own self very well. Why would you do that for somebody else? And well, of course she would do that for me. When she saw a need, she willingly, she wanted to be kind and do what she could do to alleviate your burden. I'm richer because I knew her. Her friends she held close. Her old friends she held closer. There was no replacing the people she loved. And there are plenty who loved her dearly. Like others have said, I feel proud and honored to have been able to talk to you about her. And I hope to hear your stories about our girl. So, thanks.
We'd like to invite anyone who has a story or wants to say something to come now, or save your story for when you come to our house. Would anyone like to say something?
Hey everybody, my name's Tim. I'm also an alcoholic. I don't really know what to say about Maureen that hasn't already been shared by people. Maureen was, without question, one of the most profound relationships I've formed in my adult life. I think we had a lot in common. We often said that had we known each other back in the day, no romance, but that we would have gotten each other in an enormous amount of trouble. But as it was later, Maureen kept me out of trouble. You know, she was my sponsor. Mary Beth had to Johnny one-up everybody and had Maureen as a sponsor longer than anybody. But we got together. We had breakfast every Thursday. I called it Thursdays with Maureen. Sorry, cliche. But when you have breakfast with somebody every week, you just find out what's on their mind. You get a chance to touch base and find out what they're thinking about. And Maureen spent all of her time thinking about and caring about the people that she loved. She talked an enormous amount about her family. Seemed to come up all the time. Not always about Buffalo Bills football, although that was a little thing that we shared. We always texted back and forth whenever the Chiefs were playing the Bills, and occasionally, a couple of times, got together to watch the game. And that was something fun that we shared. I really wanted to get up today. I'm doing something that Maureen would be cross with me. Maureen's idea was to always solve problems with a smile. There was some way to get through an issue without letting it pull you down. I saw her handle her challenges with Paul that way with such unbelievable grace and kindness. I mean, I thought that was powerful. we were at breakfast when unexpectedly my dad called. My dad almost never called me, so I answered immediately. I thought it was probably about a football pool or something that we were doing together. And he got out the words, Tim, your mom's died. And I've never had an emotion like that. I was just instantly shut down. Couldn't think of what to say, couldn't think of what to do. I dropped the phone. Maureen reached across the table. She caught me. She called my wife. And that's what Maureen did for people. She was about kindness and service to others. But I'm doing something today that I know that she would have a problem with, and that's because I carry regret. I regret that in those moments I had with Maureen, I didn't ask more questions. I didn't listen more. You know, sometimes with a sponsor-sponsee relationship, man, it's the Tim show. And I'm just talking about my issues and my things. And her capacity to sit and listen in kindness and love and share were amazing. So my regret today is that now that she's gone, I wish I'd have asked more questions. I wish I'd have listened more attentively. We had a lot of fun. We had a lot of giggles, a little bit of gossip, not bad, a little bit. You know, just nothing too scandalous. But I wish that I'd have taken those moments. So the thing I'm going to try to take forward from that is that I'm going to try to identify people in my life who I haven't told enough that I care about them, that I haven't reached out and taken those opportunities, because and I realize this is a cliche, but it is so true, because when they're gone, they're gone. And if you have something to say, if you want somebody to know you love them, tell them you love them. That would make Maureen smile. So, anyway.
Anyone else? Well, to end as we began, I'm much obliged that you're all here, and I will carry that phrase with me to remember that Maureen said it in 2006. We've talked about her wisdom, and that's an example of the things that she knew way before any of the rest of us had a chance to know. I'm grateful for all of you being here. I hope that you can all come to Tim and my house. The address is on the program. We have food, and hope that'll create a different venue for sharing stories that will be more casual for those of you who don't want to get up in front of groups. And thank you so much for being here. Let's just bow our heads with a moment of silence.